Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm playing in the Tier 7 Swedish medium tank. It's the Leo, and this vehicle is going to be very popular on the European server over the next couple of weeks as the Kranvang, the Tier 10 Swedish auto-loading heavy tank, which this vehicle will eventually lead into, is currently top of the tree. So you can see a lot of them in the matchmaker. That's why I did a tech tree showcase on the entirety of the Swedish auto-loading heavy branch last Sunday, so you could try and figure out all about the line, and I could try and spread that information about it so you can make better decisions about whether it's something that's worthwhile to go for. So the next two games that you're going to see today, it's a double helping of gameplay, will be from the tech tree showcase. I played the Leo twice. Why did I play the Leo twice? Was it because we had a terrible game? Not quite. Fortunately, it was because I wanted to show that there are two different ways to play the Leo. You can play the Leo with the 75mm gun, the same one that you used on the previous vehicle, the Stridsvagn 74, or alternatively, you can use the 105mm caliber gun on this vehicle, which doubles the alpha damage. But of course, if you double the alpha damage in World of Tanks, you do have to make some sacrifices in other areas. And in today's video, I'm going to hopefully let you know about the benefits, the negatives, and try and come to an opinion about what is actually the best gun to use on the Leo. Now, any of you who've been watching the stream recently or just been in tune on YouTube will know that I just completed Wargaming's Burlesque challenge. Nearly called it the Burlesque challenge there. That would have been a whole different kind of challenge that Wargaming would be releasing, yes. And I did it on my free-to-play account. And I actually played the Leo a lot during the free-to-play marathon, and I kept bouncing backwards and forwards between the two guns, the 75mm, the 105mm, and I couldn't quite decide about which one I preferred. And a lot of that is because when you're playing on a free-to-play account, you don't have all of the advantages that you have on a pay-to-win account. Your gun handling is much worse because you can't use a premium consumable. Usually your crew skills are worse. You don't have snapshot. You don't have brothers in arms. You don't have all of those lovely extra things that you can have with a premium account and being able to boost your crews a lot faster, or even just buying tanks that have 0 skill crews on so you can end up just having more skills than your opponents. Sounds a bit bizarre, right? But that's just the fact of it. So on my pay-to-win account, this 75mm just feels absolutely awesome. It's got better aim time, 1.8 seconds aim time compared to the 3 seconds that you have on the larger caliber gun. And the accuracy at 0.33 is nearly 0.1 better than the 0.42 that you have on the 105mm caliber gun. But the main difference will be the damage per minute. The damage per minute on this 75mm is 2,000, whereas the damage per minute on the 105mm is 1,600. So this gun has literally got 25% more damage per minute than if you use the large caliber gun. And yet you're not really lacking too much of the penetration on this gun as well. Your standard rounds are a little less efficient. You have 148mm of pen compared to 155 on the 105mm. But your premium rounds are actually better on this tank, packing a whopping 200mm of penetration, which is very decent for a tier 7 tank and enough to be able to engage whatever you want. So, I'll look at that moment. We just made the tier 7 medium tank run away. This was an absolute beautiful moment of this game, and we've definitely just allowed our team to come back into it. If I didn't help this Super Pershing and I didn't help the SU-100 and 30 PM there, they would have undoubtedly died, and then my team would have been able, well, the enemy team would have been able to flank round and kill the T-95. We got above the Leo. We showed him that we weren't afraid to take him on, even though we're 2 tiers below him, because he's got weak armor, I've got weak armor. Becomes a damage per minute fight, and with the 75mm gun, we're able to just keep the damage per minute going into him, and he's unable to deal with it. So in this situation, it's all about just tracking your opponents, and as you can see, I absolutely mess up there. But luckily, a nice little bit of moving allows me to get out of the second harm's way of the tier 7 French tank destroyer shell, and just look what we're able to do here. So this is a very interesting scenario, because if I'd been using the 105mm, I may have taken the AMX AC-46's tracks off with a single shot. However, one thing's for certain, I wouldn't have been able to rip him apart that quickly like I can do with the 75mm gun. And just like that, an entirety of a tier 7 tank destroyer dealt with, only losing 200 hit points to the enemy vehicle. That's fantastic stuff. Now, so what is the best gun in that situation? There is kind of no best gun. The 105mm, I guess I could have taken the tracks off with a single shot, but the 75mm allows me to actually deal with him quick enough before undoubtedly the enemy team might have been able to flank me or take me on. So it's a tricky one. It's a real tricky one. But I think that all in all, the 75mm with the 25% higher DPM there is really what you want to be using to just be able to rip apart your opponents very, very quickly. And the aim time, the accuracy, you have less RNG, you spend less time aiming. Alright, so this is a rather unfortunate situation here. I'm thinking that the Object 430 is going to go and cap, but does he manage to spot me? Oh, absolute disaster. My sixth sense goes off, meaning that 430 has spotted me, and I drive like a bit of a donkey there, trying to get away from definitely a tier 9 medium tank that I can't fight. Leo, yeah, I've got a chance. I can penetrate him fairly reliably. 430, yeah, probably not, even with the premium rounds that we only have left over in this tank. And there's actually one thing that I should mention about this vehicle, and that is that it carries substantially less damage potential if you choose to use the 75mm. If you use the 75mm, you only can do 7,500 average damage to your opponents. If you use the 105mm, it goes up to 10,500. So be warned, if you're a free-to-play player and use the 75mm, you're quite often going to run out of ammunition, or you're going to have to start loading gold rounds unnecessarily at the end of the game when you could probably get away with standard rounds. So this is a rather unfortunate situation for the Leo. The 430 called my bluff. I was hoping he was going to drive on away from me. And while we do manage to penetrate him once, hopefully we're going to penetrate him again. Actually, we bounce off his armor. He calls our bluff and he finds us behind the building. But is this job done for the Leo? While we do get vanquished by the tier 9 Soviet medium tank, yeah, there is one tank left alive on my team, and that's an Su-130 PM. After the T-95's taken out by the T-30, and with 189 hit points. Is it going to be a case that the greedy Object 430 who decided not to cap in that situation, but instead come and hunt me, is now going to lose the game via cap? Well, with 20 seconds, 18 seconds, let's just speed it up a little bit, and then slow it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, brilliant stuff. That is the kind of impact I want to have in my bottom tier matchmaking. You know, you're the tier 7 medium tank, you're dealing with tier 9 vehicles, you're not afraid to go after the Leopard, and then you can bait the best, probably the best tech tree medium tank in the game tier for tier, the Object 430, into leaving the cap circle, going on a wild goose chase, which actually did end up with the goose kind of getting a bit guillotined at the end. But importantly, the distraction that my team needed to be able to take this one down in the Su-130 calmly caps out the enemy base. Alright, next up, the matchmaking has been much more favourable to us. We're against tier 6 and tier 7 tanks, and we're using the gun that is kind of better for if you're a free-to-play player dealing with higher tiered opponents, because of course the penetration on your standard rounds is now up to 155, and your alpha damage is up to 300. Yes, literally double that of the 75mm gun. Interestingly, however, the premium penetration on the larger caliber gun is actually worse than the premium penetration on the 75mm. We're now down to 94. But just look at that pineapple reticle in the middle of your screen. Absolutely gigantic. And what does that mean? That means aiming, 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 and then a miss after all of that. And then this feeling of disappointment and frustration washes over you. All too familiar in World of Tanks, right? But much more familiar with the 105mm than it is with the 75. I'm 90% sure that we probably would have hit the enemy tank there with the 75mm on this vehicle. And now another big alpha damage tank appears before me. It's the P43 Ter. Now the P43 Ter, or the Peter as I like to call it, has got a 90mm gun and not a 105mm gun. So his alpha damage is 240. My alpha damage is 300. And I actually make a bit of a misplay there. I come around the corner thinking, I'm going to be able to get this gentleman. And then I realize, wait, if I've got higher alpha, then that probably means that he's got the better rate of fire than me, right? Luckily, we can out-trade him. And with the artillery shell that hit the Peter, means that his crew skills will be reduced, his aim time will be horrendous, and he just can't sit there. You can't sit in that location. You can't do what that tank was doing. And luckily, through working within our artillery barrage, we managed to make the alpha damage work, right? And those are two brutal shots. So we were able to trade way better with this gun than we probably would have traded with the 75mm. And it just feels so good to do those 300 alpha damage shots and then to relocate while you're reloading. Sure, your damage per minute is less, but if you can manage to reload while you're changing position, trying to get at another shot, and you can out-trade your opponents, then are you really actually losing damage per minute if you're spending the time reloading anyway and maneuvering into the next position that you want to be? And that's the age-old question in World of Tanks. Is damage per minute or is alpha damage king? And again, it just completely depends on the scenario. One thing I will mention about this 105mm gun though, and this is a very important thing to realize, and not a lot of people realize this in World of Tanks, is the way that the overmatch mechanics work. And I've talked about them on the channel frequently, but I have to talk about them when we're talking about the differences in gun calibers. A 75mm caliber gun will overmatch 24mm caliber plates. That means that if you hit a plate which is 24mm thick, it's generally always going to go in. However, the 105mm, of course, is going to overmatch 34mm caliber plates. And there are a lot more plates that are 34 than there are that are 30, or even that are 25, for example. And so that means that this gun, if you hit the belly of a tank, or you hit the engine deck of a vehicle, or even if you just shoot against some of the more weakly armored vehicles as they're side-scraping, you can do some absolutely crazy things. The Leo armor, for example, is 30mm thick, and so that means that this vehicle will overmatch itself. So if a Leo side scrapes against you and you're using the large caliber gun, you can overmatch its side armor and also take off its tracks, irrelevant of the angle. Whereas if you use the 75mm gun, that means that you're not going to be able to overmatch that vehicle, and you're going to have to shoot it when it's not angled at more than 70 degrees to be able to penetrate. So yeah, it's not black and white on this vehicle. It definitely isn't. It's very much more of there are different scenarios that the vehicle will be doing well in. It's lots of shades of grey in between. There's no one individual right choice for this vehicle. And that's what's beautiful about this tank. And I really wish there were more vehicles like the Leo in World of Tanks, because I think it's really great when there are multiple ways to play a tank. And I think the Wargaming should have definitely considered about making multiple competitive guns on a vehicle to be able to allow you to choose how you wanted to be able to play the tank. I think it's exciting on a vehicle like the Borsig, it's exciting on a vehicle like the Leo. It's even exciting on a vehicle like the Assault Sherman, or even on the M4 Sherman as well. Do you want to play it with the 76mm? I really can't believe that one bounced off the Tiger P though. But then again, I can't believe that I also bounced the Tiger P. So yeah, I guess it's a fair trade. And eventually we get to shut down the tier 7 heavy tank. So a nice run of shells there for the Leo. We're now on 3 kills. And we just managed to keep the alpha damage high, as you would do with the 105. And that's just allowing us to outtrade and to make better decisions. I do feel that when I'm playing the 75mm, I'm just trading my hit points, because of course if your rate of fire is that good, and we're talking about a rate of fire, a reload time of 4.5 seconds and a rate of fire of over 13 rounds a minute, you have to sit in front of people. You don't really have a chance to be able to pull back around the corner and then pull out again. You're just going to have to sit in front of them, and you're going to have to say, alright guys, I'm going to trade. Whereas with this 105mm, you do have time to pull back around the corners. Hopefully the enemies are then going to aim at somebody else, or maybe they just have lower damage than you. And that's definitely the case when you're in a matchup like this. And then you can come out and you can put 300 into them to hopefully only take 150 from them, for example. And so the Leo versus the 75mm versus the 105mm. What would be my recommendation for all of you players out there who are planning to pick up this tank and play it when it's top of the tree this month? Alright, here's my recommendation. If you're a pay-to-win player, and you feel that, or maybe you feel like you're a slightly better player or just pay to win and you're willing to fire a lot of premium rounds and you don't mind wasting a few credits when you run out of standard rounds in a game, I think the 75mm is going to be better for you. I think with the 75mm, you're going to be able to dab that 2 key more to have more penetration than the 105mm would. You're not going to worry about firing more premium rounds that can end up really adding up at the end of the battle, as the difference in the price between the premium rounds of the different gun calibers is not really all that high. And you're going to have to fire twice as many to do as much as you would do with the 105mm. So I think for a pay-to-win player out there, or somebody who likes a vehicle like the Comet, or you like some of your other faster firing light tanks or medium tanks in the game, I think the 75mm is going to perform better for you. However, for the free-to-play players out there, and who you can have better penetration with your standard rounds on the 105mm, and also you don't have all of the crew skills, you don't have all of the dispersion values when you're moving with maybe some of your your driver skills, or even if you have the turret traverse improvement skill, snapshot, then you're probably going to do better with the 105mm. And then I think with the 300 alpha damage that this gun has, then it is going to be a better choice. You're going to end up probably trading better, especially against heavies. You're not going to have to go all in against them and try and use your mobility. It's going to be a much easier gun to play with, and I think the 105mm that you saw in this battle would be the gun that I would recommend to at least 75 or even a majority of free-to-play players out there. But just because the 105mm is such a performer doesn't mean that it's still not a tricky choice. And it's just what I love about this vehicle, and I would really like it if Wargaming made other vehicles in the game have maybe choices between auto-reloaders or single-shot versions of the gun like they used to have on the Walker Bulldog back in the day. More choices mean more playstyles, and more playstyles mean there's more of an opportunity for you to customize your tank and to have at least a feeling that it's your vehicle and it's your decision-making that can have more of an impact in the battle. So a passing mention should be made to the post-game stats. Our first round with the 75mm was an ace tank for that 1,241 base experience points, and the SU-130 PM 100 cap points. You got that Invader medal, and sometimes you don't have to do a lot of damage to be able to win the battle, right, boys and girls? We made 12,000 credits, although that was with a premium account. The next game, we got a high caliber battle hero medal here, but not quite enough for an ace for the 1,173 that we achieved, as we did less damage, and it was against much lower tier tanks. Although we did pick up 4 kills here, and we didn't fire any premium rounds, I believe, or maybe just 1 in this battle. And so that means that we nail a profit with or without a premium account. Reinforcing what I said, I think the 105mm gun is going to be far better for a free-to-play player, and I think that the 75mm is probably going to be better for a pay-to-win player who is willing to harness, or shall I say, tame the wild rate of fire and the wild damage per minute that the stock gun has on this tank. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and maybe it was just useful for any of you out there who are thinking about going up the Swedish autoloading heavy line, as it is top of the tree this month. Or shall I say, this bi-week. What a silly system. I think it was better when it was weekly, but there are so many tech trees in the game now, I understand why they're doing it bi-weekly. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And stay tuned to the channel, as I've got some really exciting videos coming up, probably on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. You're definitely not going to want to miss out on them. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.